Need Bitcoin support? The pros at Coinbase Connect are here to help. Learn about self-custody, privacy, mining, lightning payments, and much more. Simply go to coinbase.com/connect and schedule a one-on-one video call with a Bitcoin pro. Take your knowledge to the next level by connecting with a pro on coinbase.com today. Please check out episode 41 with Adam O, aka Denver Bitcoin on Twitter, episode 46 with Hodl Tarantula, or episode 49 with Adam Meister. All are pros you can connect with at coinbase.com connect today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. My name is Chris Alamo, and I am an amateur investor. This podcast is my open source journal of everything I learn about investing and wealth management. I'm here to explore the key concepts, market dynamics, and investing strategies that will assist you on the path towards financial independence and financial literacy. My mission is to build us from amateurs to experts. All suggestions are my own, and I recommend that you should do your own research before taking any investment advice. See you in this week's episode. I hope you enjoy it. All right, everyone, welcome to the show. This is episode 56 of the Amateur Investors. On this episode, I'm going to be interviewing fellow Bitcoin pleb, Surfer Jim. That's kind of really come onto Bitcoin Twitter in the last year or so, or at least that's when I found him. So he's kind of infamous for calling out a certain fiat billionaire about his takes on Bitcoin. So Jim, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I like talking about Bitcoin, so.
Me too. Pleasure to have you here. I love having Bitcoiners on the show and love talking Bitcoin and talking shop. But so I guess getting into that, what I normally ask all Bitcoiners come on the show is, how did you get into Bitcoin? What were kind of your three touch points or multiple touch points? And then ultimately what led you to investing in it? And what class were you, if you don't mind saying that as well?
Class of 17.
Okay.
Oh shoot, there was something you said at the very beginning I was going to ask you.
Touch points of Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, why did you assume there was three?
It just seems
and
to
there
be
like was, but I just
it's so a lot of people I've talked to, it just seems to be 3 is the magic number. That was for me. That was to a lot of the people that I've talked to.
I have a feeling it does take, more than one for most people, and 2 isn't always enough either, and it wasn't enough for me, but the second one was pretty good. And that's why the third one took so easily. So the first one was a guy I know that we had worked together, and he was a bunch younger than me, maybe 10 years or something. But at the time, and this has got to be 2015, I didn't take him seriously enough because he was talking about money on the internet, and he was into internet gaming, and that's not something I've ever done. And I just didn't think it was serious. And he didn't know anything about it to be able to explain to me what I know it to be. So I didn't take it seriously at all. He's like, you ever heard of this Bitcoin thing? And I'm like, no, what is it? He's like, it's some like internet money. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. And that was it. Like, It didn't mean anything because the guy telling me, probably he didn't really know, but also I didn't take him seriously because I thought, like, what the heck could he know? He's just he's a kid to me, so to speak. And then the second one was just when I used to watch TV, I was scrolling through Netflix, just looking for anything to watch. And I saw this thing about Bitcoin. It was some kind of a documentary. I wish I could remember the name of it, but it caught my attention because I had heard about it. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Let me see what this is. And I like documentaries of all types. And at the end of it, I came away with the impression like, it's too difficult. So they focused a lot on mining, and there was a lot of discussion about Mt. Gox. So again, this is like definitely pre-2016, or maybe it's 2016. I forget. The point is, it looked complicated. I'm not like some computer nerd. They were showing guys with mining Bitcoin in their living rooms with their pissed off girlfriends because they were noisy and hot. Like people still talk about today, only this was just like, I don't even think they were up to ASICs yet, but maybe they were in terms of the computers they were using. But these guys would just like, they would just be like a rack with wires everywhere. And I'm looking like, I could never do that.
It was probably GPU mining. It was probably GPU
maybe,
mining.
The point was it looked cool and interesting. And I was intrigued, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't have time for that. I don't have time to learn it. It wasn't promising enough. And the documentary, he did not focus enough on number go up technology, because if it had, I might have considered it more. It was more about like the unique tech of it all. And I don't know. I mean, they certainly talked about how it could be something someday, but the bottom line was it didn't catch my attention enough. All right. So the third touch is the one that really got me and has a lot to do with my current occupation. I've been a general contractor for over 30 years, running my own construction company. I happen to work in a place called Fire Island. Many people know this. I've said it before. It's a barrier island on the south shore of Long Island, and it's mostly summer homes. There's some people that live there year round, but very few. And in the off season, which is now, so we're recording this in November of 2021. Everybody's just finally off the beach. The houses get shut down, water gets shut off, pipes get blown out so they don't freeze, and nobody shows up until like the spring again, till April. But the only people around is contractors like me. And when I started working there over 30 years ago, I had a clean slate. No one knew me. I got introduced to one family in this particular town that has a bunch of, so they have a local municipality, a local government. They're like another layer of government. And they got a bunch of rules they run this town by and a bunch of people that run the town. And I learned all this and I realized like, okay, they don't know me. I got this clean slate. Let me just follow the rules, get along with everybody, and maybe I could make something of this. So I was getting introduced into an area to do construction work, and I was new in construction anyway, but nobody had to know that about me. Nobody knew my competence level. That I was just being introduced, and literally one person started, one customer, and working for them. So I'd be working for these people, and they're not home. Essentially, they're either if the work was getting done when they were still using their homes. So generally, no work. Most people don't want work done in the middle of the summer when they're living in their house. But, going into summer and coming out of summer, sometimes it overlaps where they're coming out on weekends or whatever. So sometimes I see the customers, sometimes not. But eventually they don't come back till the spring. And so what I realized right away was they had to trust me. And I had to make sure that they would continue to trust me by not breaching that trust, essentially. And I had to do that with everybody I came in contact with, including the people that ran this little village where I did most of my work. So when I heard about Bitcoin the third time, it was a TED talk by a woman, and she connected Bitcoin with the concept of trust in two ways. One, that you could trust this thing to work without having to trust other people. And that was like, whoa, how does that work? What do you mean you have to trust other people? Somebody wrote the code. And I was really intrigued. And it just hit me really hard because the business I had been running for many years already built totally on trust. I literally never, ever advertised for 30 years. The only minimal advertising I ever did was I bought T-shirts and sweatshirts for guys that worked for me over the years, and a couple signs that would go in front of the job sites once in a while. And I usually forgot to do it anyway. And thankfully, I just always had work. People trusted me because I didn't breach their trust. I followed through with the contracts. What I did too for people was, first, most of my customers said that no one had ever done this. This is way back before digital photography. I would take pictures, get double prints, and send one set to the customer. And they didn't even know they were coming. And it would be days later after I would have already talked to them on the phone and told them that I did the work. But they didn't know that. They couldn't know. They're not there. There's no internet. This is before cell phones. Literally, I'm talking, I started my business, 30 years ago in the 90s, right? So I was out there early 90s. So, I would send pictures. They loved it. It helped build my trust. The first customer I got recommended to, it was really funny because he shows me all this work. I'm taking all these notes, and he points to a light on the wall of the house, and he goes, "Can you fix that?" And it was just hanging down a little. I said, I don't have any tools, but do you have like a screwdriver? I might be able to fix it. Let me see. And he gets me a screwdriver. I fix it right in front of him, and he's blown away. This is like the kind of guy who couldn't change a light bulb. So he couldn't even see what was wrong with it. And to me, it was just like, I don't know, it's probably something loose. Let me just investigate. And if it was built, it usually could come apart. Like, it's as simple as that. So you look around like, how does this come apart? How do I open it? Let me see what's going on. And logic and reason of how things are made. From growing up my whole life, I used to take everything apart. So I just know stuff. I don't know. I was like, yeah, I'll fix it. And I knew I had the job. Immediately, I knew I had the job. When I came back and they signed all the contracts, he told like 20 of his neighbors to just hire me. I hadn't even done the work yet. He just told people, you got to hire this guy, Jim. He's great. I'm like, thanks. This guy named Hal, great guy. He's passed away now. But I literally still work for his daughter who got the house. This is over 30 years. They've never fired me, these people. and it's just really good. Like this is just one of these lessons. You're going to go into business. This is what I like about Bitcoin. The people in Bitcoin seem to be honest, trustworthy people that want truth in their life. They don't want to manipulate other people and screw around. They just want to talk truth. And Bitcoin is this ledger of truth, that we talk about it. It's like a truth machine, like nobody can dispute the Bitcoin blockchain. And every 10 minutes we update it and everybody on the planet agrees. And that's like an amazing thing. I don't know. So yeah, so it was this trust. Trust is what really brought me over the finish line to look at Bitcoin seriously. So
yeah, that's a great long-winded response. I love it. So that actually kind of leads me to my next point. So obviously part of the ethos baked into Bitcoin is, appears to be truth seeking, and, obviously don't trust, verify. And we kind of do that as well. It kind of tying in with your contractor days. Obviously you were being honest and truthful about the work you were doing. And then you were obviously verifying that with pictures by sending it to them. Can you tell the audience the story? I know it was a story that you said about one of the guys when you were young in your career about was breaking people's trust, that he was basically doing work and then not completing it. And then if you want to expand that, I know you said on other podcasts as well.
Well, what that is one of the things that I figured out to do was to ask customers why they were hiring me, so as to allude to, what happened to the last guy. What did he do wrong? And one customer in particular had said to me that the guy said the work was done and sent the final bill, and the work wasn't done. And when the woman came out in the spring, his excuse was, "Oh, I plan to get back to it. I'm so sorry." And he eventually did. She told me, he did, but she said it, probably she even used the words, but my trust was broken, like I couldn't. And then when this other guy, the same guy who recommended me to this lady, this guy, Hal, she said, yeah, when Hal mentioned your name, I said, oh, let's give him a call and see, and then that lady, until she passed away, she hired me, for 20 plus years. I did everything on her house. It was one of those things. I was like, well, this is going to be easy. As long as I don't lie to this lady, I'm not going to have a problem, I don't think, but it's like, don't lie to anybody, really, just do what you say you're going to do. And if you don't do it, if you screw up, if you break something, just admit it and fix it. It's not hard. It's a really simple formula. Like, suck it up, lose some money, lose some time, whatever it is, get pissed off, but just do it. Just don't screw the customer. I don't know, man. You got to get, unless you're ready to retire, you need future work, right? So you need everybody to be a happy customer. If they're already hiring you, it's already like they're already there. They're already your customer. Now all you got to do is keep them. Yeah. Like it's hard to get them, but once you got them, you can lose them really easily. But it's also pretty easy to keep them. You just got to do what they expect. Talk about what everything's expected. Make sure your contract's worded right, that everybody understands. I don't know. It doesn't seem that hard, and yet there's a lot of people out there doing it poorly.
I agree. So, well, I guess that kind of leads me to my next point. So I know I'm stealing from Jeff Booth, a quote that he says, if we have corruption in base layer money, we have corruption everywhere. And it seems now in this day and age, I mean, I'm very young by comparison, but even my parents are saying, it's very hard to find honest men or women just in the working world now. It seems everyone's always trying to get one up on someone else. They're always trying to take the quick shortcut, getting the quick buck. And it leads all the way up through politicians. I mean, I'm young, but I've never really trusted politicians in my life. It seems that way, whether they're left or right or red or blue or R or D, whatever, it doesn't matter. They both seem to be pretty scummy in their regards. Yeah, there's some that the consensus or populations like more than others, but now in this day and age, it seems few and far between, basically. So I guess with all that being said, I guess, how is it that Bitcoin is truth on that layer? And then how do we build a new world on top of that new money?
Wait, how do I see Bitcoin as truth?
Yeah, like how do you see Bitcoin as truth? And then how are we going to use this new money to build a better society overall?
All right. So the society gets built automatically around the truth of Bitcoin because it aligns people around one common language, essentially. I'm sure this, but for the people listening that may not, I phrase it this way: money is the most important construct or invention humans have ever come up with. Money is not something natural on the earth, even though we took the concept of money and we applied it to natural things like seashells and feathers and eventually gold. to use to represent in a physical form a thing we want to use as money, which represents our time and our effort.
Mhm.
So that when we were in a barter society, thousands of years ago, and you had cows and I had chickens and we wanted to trade because, we each wanted what the other had. It wasn't always easy to do. Maybe you didn't want as many chickens as one cow was worth or whatever. And so humans came up with something in the middle called money that could be used as an intermediary form of exchange, so that if everybody could agree on it, we could use that thing in the middle and everything could be priced in the thing that's in the middle instead of every other thing. And that's essentially what money does, is it bridges the gap of trade between people that are trying to move different items because they specialize in making different things, or they come from different parts of the world, or whatever it might be. And so humanity has grown by leaps and bounds because of this thing called money that we were able to agree on, essentially. As and again, it's not perfect, and it wasn't universal at the same time in all places, but societies generally converged on a form of money that they decided to use within that society. Eventually, most of the world, if not the whole world, agreed that gold was the best money. But then ultimately, some people figured out ways to corrupt the use of gold as money. And that's where we ended up with Bitcoin being this. All right. So then the point is, in saying that money is the most important invention in all of human history, I lead to making the statement that Bitcoin, because it's the best form of money, and so I'll tie it back to what I interrupted myself in saying. Bitcoin is the best form of money. That makes Bitcoin the most important invention, or I like to call it a discovery, most important discovery in all of human history. When I say that to people who don't know anything about Bitcoin, they just stare at me. It doesn't even register.
Yeah.
When I say Bitcoin is the most important discovery in all of human history, it beats the wheel, fire,
the internet,
the discovery of mathematics, all of it, because it's the most important, money being the most important invention that's allowed humans to progress further and faster than any other construct, any other thing. Money was, again, this thing in the middle. It's known as the most saleable good. I like to say that, and I might have stole this from somebody else, who knows. With money, you can buy anything, but with anything, you can also buy money. So anything you have, you can trade it for this thing called money if somebody wants the thing you have and they have some money you want. And so because it's the thing that everybody can use in the middle, it becomes a type of a language, except that the world has 5,000 of these monies all over the place. And it's very difficult. And some governments, groups of people that call themselves governments that have taken control over geographic areas, won't allow certain monies to operate with certain other monies because they have the monopoly on extortion and violence, and they force citizens against using these things because they write words on paper preventing them from doing it without the risk of being thrown in a box. So, without that, people could just use money the way it was meant to be used. But you can't have a few people corrupting it like we have now with fiat money systems that are no longer pegged to anything like gold like we used to have. So Bitcoin comes along and is, as you and I know, a decentralized platform for moving value around that essentially nobody controls at this point. And it's got a whole bunch of parameters that allow it to work as money. And because nobody gets to change it and nobody gets to really control it, but anybody can join, and anybody can study it and learn how it works. You don't have to trust me to tell you how it works. You can go learn it on your own. The code is open source. And there's just all these features that allow you to objectively and logically look at the thing called Bitcoin and determine, can this act as a money? And there's millions of people on the planet now that agree that it can. The exchange rate to all of the fiat currencies has done nothing but continue to go upward, up and down on its way upward, as we know, as the world is adopting it in the form of a money, either to store value, to use as a medium of exchange to buy things, or as a unit of account to denominate their wealth. Many people actually consider their wealth in Bitcoin terms instead of fiat terms. And that's going to happen more and more. And so Bitcoin is emerging as a new money on the planet because it has all the properties that money needs to have. And because it was built the way it was built, and you don't have to trust people to join this system, and you can trust the way it works if you want to study it or trust somebody that studied it and listen to what they have to say. That's up to you. The point is, it's open enough and permissionless and everything else that you can decide if this thing is money, and you can decide if it's working the way people say it's working. And if that's true, this is an absolute truth machine, because it's keeping track of digital files for people that everybody on the planet agrees to every 10 minutes. That is to say, if I assign value to this digital file by paying somebody money for it, then I get to control it, which is essentially what Bitcoin is. If everybody on the planet agrees that I'm controlling that digital file, nobody else is, that means that the money that I paid for that digital file representing my labor is in my control, and no one can touch it. The government can't take it away. If I put that labor into a home that I buy and I forget to pay the taxes, it can just be taken out from under me. All that hard work, years and years. But in something like Bitcoin, now, detractors would say, yeah, but you have to trust somebody else is going to want that digital file in the future. And I'm going to trust that because they're going to be able to store their labor in it if they can get a hold of it one day. And so somebody might actually trade me something for it, either goods or services, or a form of money I might want or need to get me something else I want. I'm in a foreign country and they only take some weird foreign dollars, but I have Bitcoin and somebody wants to trade me so I can go buy dinner. Okay, fine. I don't care if I have to go through some fiat to spend my Bitcoin if I want to get what I want to get.
Yeah.
The point is, I think it's going to be there in the future because the way the system works, I don't have to worry that someone's going to steal it, change the protocol, shut it off. Like 100 years from now, my heirs that might take over some of these digital files that I control might be able to buy a mansion with some of it. It might be worth so much just because this system has proven itself to be essentially uncorruptible, unbreakable, I want to say shut offable. I guess that's not a word, but no one can stop it, right?
Unstoppable,
so unstoppable, but it didn't flow with the whole. I was trying to rhyme or whatever. Now the point is, you and I know deep about what Bitcoin actually is, and so it takes a little time to study it. There's a lot of disciplines that overlap in terms of helping to understand Bitcoin, like economics and game theory and computer science. There's a lot of disciplines that really are overlapping here. The study of money alone is a huge education that it's worth going through, but most people, well, they don't learn it in school. We all know that. But for those who take the opportunity, it could take, hours and hours, days, weeks, months to really learn what's going on with money around the world. And then to like go, okay, well, then how does Bitcoin fit into that? You can spend months more. But you can also learn it relatively quick by reading a couple good books or watching a couple good podcasts, because the information's out there and it's all free. And, like I will say to anybody listening that's on the fence, don't walk away. If this is one of those touches, do your homework. This is the most important discovery in all of human history. And if you do enough homework, you'll come to agree with that statement. I think. I think there's many thousands of people on the planet right now that would wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, I think Michael Saylor gets that point that if you do an honest 40 hours or maybe even 100 hours of research into Bitcoin, you can't walk away from it saying, I don't want to put some of my fiat money exchange some of my fiat money or assets that I have otherwise for Bitcoin. And I think that holds true.
I've always thought 100 hours is, if you do that much, that's like a little more than 2 weeks, full weeks of work. Like if you went to work 8 hours a day for, 8-10 days, you're going to learn a lot about any industry, if you're really there focusing, so yeah. For those who willing to really take the time, I don't think you need 100 hours, but if you do 100 hours, I think it's going to be pretty clear. But you got to do the right 100 hours too. You got to do the right hours, period. If you listen to the wrong people, you're just going to get off track. You're going to get either misled totally, misinformed, lied to, whatever. And then coming back to Bitcoin will be that much harder because you will have so much doubt planted by people that really don't understand it. It could make it harder to get through. It's almost better if you have a clean slate, you learn all about Bitcoin and then spend some time learning about why all the other cryptocurrencies are garbage compared to it. Like I'm not saying don't look at them. What I am saying is that if you learn about Bitcoin first and learn deeply about how it works, it will be really clear why all the other ones are garbage. It'll just be that much easier. You won't need to spend nearly as much time analyzing any of them. But if you start over there and then have to come back to Bitcoin, you'll spend twice as much of your time learning than you actually need to.
I agree. Yeah, and I think this is a great story that I steal from Russell Coon. For I know Jim probably knows him. He's a prominent Bitcoiner. He was
Yeah.
an NFL guard or tackle in the NFL. He played for the Broncos and also the Panthers and I think a few other teams. Ultimately, what he really found about Bitcoin, I think it was a trip in either 2015 or 2016. He's Nigerian, first generation American. His parents are from Nigeria, but they came to the States for a better opportunity. Ultimately, he made a very good living playing in the NFL and was very proud of his career. He has a Super Bowl ring, more than most people can say.
Yeah.
But he went to go visit family back in Nigeria. And most people don't know this, but the US does not take too kindly to Nigeria, at least in terms of banking relations. So when he went over there, he told his credit card companies, his banks, all these different things. He was going there. They okayed it. They said, yep, no problem. He's like, I'm going to be going there. Don't flag any charges. It's going to be me. I'm visiting family. So he brought some US dollars as cash because the US dollar was more prominent or more favorable currency, fiat currency, than the Nigerian, I forget the Nigerian dollar.
Naira.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. The Lyra. So when he went over there and he was giving out money to his family to help them out to have US dollars instead of the Nigerian currency. And ultimately, he ended up running out of fiat currency. So he went to a bank in Nigeria and asked for them to take out or withdraw money from there, either through a wire or through a bank from Nigeria contacting his bank and sending him US dollars. Ultimately, in the process of doing that, the bank said that, sorry, sir, we cannot provide you with the dollars. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, my account's not overdrawn. I have money in there. Like, why can I not withdraw it? So he ultimately gives a call back to the United States and was like, hey, what's going on? It's my money. Why can't I do this? Basically, the banker was very nice to him, but said that, sorry, sir, they're kind of on a list of countries that we don't do business with here in the United States. So even though it's you and you verified your identity with Social Security or whatever their security reasons are, security codes, whatever, or questions, they said, sorry, sir, I can't wire you this money. So he's like, let me speak to the manager, goes to the manager. Same charade. The banker said, I'm sorry, sir, we can't help you today. We'll gladly help you when you come back to the United States, but we're not going to wire money to the address that you're currently at. So this was in 2015 or 2016. And then obviously Russell kind of figured out like, crap, like this money is in a bank and it's quote unquote my money, but it's not my money. The bank, for whatever reason, for your nationality, race, sex, religion, where you live, where you reside, there's all this talk about, in the United States that you don't want to discriminate or do that, but you can even see it in the base layer. The bank is discriminating against him, who's a US citizen visiting another country, and they won't let him take out money that he earned, hard-earned money that he earned playing in the NFL, giving up his body, his life, his mind, whatever it may be, blood, sweat, and tears. And they're saying, sorry, sir, we can't give you this money because they're on a list that our government doesn't do banking relations with the country of Nigeria or this bank in Nigeria because we see them as a threat, whether a domestic or international terrorist threat. They didn't specify, but they just say they see them as a threat. We can't do business with them. So ultimately, I mean, if that doesn't open your eyes, I know that's not a thing that many Americans go through, or even Americans that have now come to the United States and kind of reside here fully. But for people like people in El Salvador that are using Western Union, or a poorer nation where they're sending money through a broker, Western Union or a banking system, and they take gigantic fees, or they won't even let them do that, Bitcoin is what can be a savior to them and their family and their prosperity as a people. And I don't know if you want to comment on that story, Jim.
Well, I'll comment by saying I've had my fair share, especially in the last few years, of banking issues with regard to the ability to use and retain and receive my own money. Like recently, like a week or two ago, a woman wanting to pay me over this app called Zelle, because we happen to have accounts within the same bank. And the amount was more than $5,000. So it gets held up in limbo for like 24 hours because, it was a stupid process. I had to send her a request for the payment. So, all right, well, that's easy. She has to send me the payment. She tries, it fails because it's too much. They didn't send a message, oh, break it up into two payments. We had to get on customer service. We had to waste hours. It was like absurd because somebody set an arbitrary limit, like $5,000. It's too scary for one human to send more than that to another human without us checking to make sure whatever they make sure. It's just insane. It's supposed to be your own money. And she had a eye-opening experience because it never happened to her before. And she's like, wow, I thought this was my money. I go, now you know why I care about Bitcoin, because this is somebody I had already said, talked about Bitcoin to this person. Anyway, point is, yeah, the banks don't care, and government, which are just other people, have written words on paper forcing these people that run these things called banks to do absurd things like restrict humans from their own use of their own money. It's just terrible. So Bitcoin
And
fixes that. Just one of the many things Bitcoin fixes on this planet.
yeah, and it's only getting worse. I mean, I hate
Yeah,
saying that, but
totally.
like, look at Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen. Not to point fingers or call names, but she wants every transaction that's over $600 to be sent. The banks would have to send them to the IRS. They'd have to be audited to say that they're not doing something fraudulent or something terroristic in
Right.
nature. Or
Yeah. That's so that they can make sure that all the billionaires pay their fair share in taxes. That's how they work that out.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Monitor 600 from every human so that the billionaires pay their fair. Right. Yeah. We see what you're doing.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It's absurd. It's all about control. That's right. Wait till they get actual money out of the, physical cash out of society. I think it might take a little while for the US dollar, but it's going to happen. CBDCs will be the thing, and then you will have no control of your money. They'll just turn it off if they want. They'll put an expiration date on it. It's really dystopian where it's going.
It's definitely, that's the path we're heading down. So I guess
I
talking more about
yeah.
the fiat billionaires, so the Mark Cubans, the Kevin O'Leary's, maybe he's not a billionaire, but I know you kind of got in a spat with Chamath back in the day. I don't know if you want to expand on that or not.
I don't mind. It's an old story at this point, boy, with the rate of the way information flows through the internet. This is actually ancient history at this point, and it's not even a year old. But I was just disappointed with Bitcoin 2021, Bitcoin Magazine, essentially, because they were putting on a Bitcoin conference and they were letting shitcoiners, in my opinion. I'm sorry, the profanity, but I don't respect Chamath at all. I think he's a scammer, like a total scammer. And I mean, it's totally obvious. I just watched a video of him recently laughing with some other VCs who were early in on what is this one? Solana.
Yeah. Yep.
And how they got a lockup period, but boy, they're gonna, as soon as they can. They were just joking about how they're going to dump it, essentially, and how it means nothing to them. It's all about the fiat dollars they're going to gain. And what they don't seem to give a crap about is there's an actual human on the other side of that trade that actually gets hurt. And there's a lot of humans out there that think these guys are respectable because they are wealthy. A lot of people don't study how they got their wealth. I mean, he was just extremely lucky, essentially be in the right place at the right time to be in on Facebook when it first started, among certain other things. But he also uses the government and the rules and regulations, which I call regulatory capture, to, once you have money, you can do things the average person can't do because of words on paper. Some humans over here said this rule applies to everybody except you with all the money. Right. So this is just how it's a very general way to phrase it, but that's how it is out there in the world everywhere. Every industry that has any type of monopoly, any union is literally a monopoly on some aspect of a trade or a part of the system where you got your rules, but we got ours. And if you want to work with us, you got to play by our rules. You set it up, and it's all through the threat of extortion and violence. That is, these rules apply to everybody. And if you break them, the law will come down on you. What is the law? Other human beings. That's it. Just people that were in diapers shitting themselves just like we all did. Just other people are going to come after you. And they're going to write words on paper saying, pay us money. You broke our rules, so pay us money. That's extortion. And if you don't do that, they come with a bunch of them with guns and surround your house and put shiny bracelets on your wrist and take you to a box and make you sit there until you comply. Pay them money or sit there for a long period of time because you broke our words on paper. It is so disgusting. All the levels of this crap. Sorry, I went off on a little bit of a tangent.
No, it's good.
Bring us back. Anyway, Chamath, sorry. That was the whole thing. These scammers, guys like him are just scammers, and they get away with stuff because the government can, help them. Essentially, and they can play in a field where the average person can't see deep into it, right? So that's what he's doing with his SPACs and his other crap. What is a SPAC? It's just words on paper, moving value around, producing nothing except more money in his pocket and less in someone else's. That's all it does. It doesn't do anything. Most investments don't do anything, don't provide. I build actual physical structures that people live in. Like it's an actual real thing. Like half the contracts on the planet that guys like Chamath use are just made up words on paper that shift money around. That's it. Yeah. Doesn't produce value of any kind except to the person who wrote the words. So I have no respect for a guy like that. Anyway, back to the story. Sorry. I mean, this stuff really pisses me off to no end, as you can tell. So, yeah, I see he's a speaker at 2021. I honestly didn't even do anything until they added Novogratz, another shitcoiner, promoting garbage to make more dollars. And I tagged both of them in the same tweet, and I called it Shitcoin 2021. And I guess I'm going to Shitcoin 2021. And Chamath attacked me. I didn't. He saw it, and he decided he's going to attack this dude, Surfer Jim. He doesn't know me from anybody. And he belittled me and said I was living in my mommy's basement and whatever else he might have said. And it was like 4 tweets between me answering his tweet and him saying something again. But the Bitcoin community just got all over the guy. Like, ultimately, what's really funny about it is a lot of things transpired, much of what you know about. I'm not going to go over everything, but ultimately people were calling for him to like quit or be fired as a speaker from the conference. And people were saying I should be the speaker instead of him, which I didn't end up doing. And I never even spoke at a conference. So I wasn't like, it's not like I wanted something like that, but other people were saying it should happen. He eventually contacted the Bitcoin Magazine people that were putting on the conference and wanted to do a remote speech. And the rules were only in person and Bitcoin only. And he eventually backed out of his position as a keynote speaker at that conference and never showed up. But for months, people were like, we're going to boo him off the stage, whatever it was. And so like, essentially the Bitcoin community, simply because I put a tweet out that he reacted to, the Bitcoin community canceled this guy, right? Like I think he literally didn't want to get booed, and he was going to get booed. There's no doubt. So I don't think he wanted that on film, and he didn't. He's just like, no, I'm not going to that thing. And so he made some excuse. Now, here's what makes it so obvious that that's why he quit. This was on his schedule. He knew he was a keynote speaker for a long time. The guy's a billionaire. He can do whatever he wants with his days. He can change his schedule anytime he wants, right? Some people have to go to work every day because they literally need every single paycheck. This man, there's no chance you can tell me this man can't just do what he wants with the rest of his life and never work another day. Of course he can. So the point is, he could do whatever he wants with his schedule. There was no schedule conflict. There was no reason he couldn't get to Miami. He had months to plan for it. But all of a sudden, something came up.
Yeah.
Well, what was that? You could make that more important or not. It's your life. It's your money. It's your time. He chose not to come. He wasn't made. Wasn't that he couldn't make it. He didn't want to make it. It was a personal choice. And I think that's hilarious. It just goes right to his weak ass character. Like totally. He can't stand the heat. He doesn't address this ever because he's weak. He's a weak scammer. Totally.
Yeah, and I kind of came into the space June or like May, June of 2020. And I mean, in the beginning, I was kind of naive to a lot of it. You're just kind of trying to learn about it. And I saw him speaking on, I guess, Laura Chin's show and a couple MSNBC. And basically, he seemed like he was kind of like a Bitcoiner and only Bitcoiner. Obviously, he had made his wealth in other assets, stocks, and, working for Facebook and such. But, he was like, oh, of all the cryptocurrencies, it's Bitcoin and only Bitcoin. And literally, and it seemed like he was holding his own. I'm like, oh, wow, like I kind of respect this guy, because I was kind of going down the rabbit hole being like, yeah, I don't have any other cryptocurrencies. I had ETH for a little bit of a month, and then I saw that it was worthless and kind of a security flaw and all the problems that came with it, and flipped that right into Bitcoin. And then when ultimately he started to slightly deviate from it and kind of change, and then like you said, then all of a sudden all these other cryptocurrencies start talking about NFTs, Solana, the gambit, basically. Obviously he owns other equities, and I wasn't going to hold that against him, but then he starts adding all these other cryptocurrencies, and then he's bragging on his podcast with his 3 other VC buddies about how they basically just buy other cryptocurrencies and then flip it on poor suspecting retail buyers. And it's horrible. I mean, that's
the epitome of pump and dump, and they just laugh about it. And I think that is a disgusting, low-level human being with no character and no integrity. It's just so disgusting. I would never want to work with people like that, hang out with them, nothing.
Yeah.
There's way too many good people out there. The nicest people are in Bitcoin. It's sad that a guy like him understands or believes in Bitcoin, but he's not loyal to the ethos of what Bitcoin really, really means, which is like individual sovereignty and fairness in the world. No, he's in it for again, he thinks in fiat dollars. He's looking at Bitcoin as like, I'm getting rich in dollars, right? Whereas I need as many sats as I could get in the future monetary system of the world, right? I don't think, I mean, he may even see it that way. He may realize it's going to flip over, but he still completely works within the fiat system, and all of his trading, investing, all that is to gain more fiat dollars. And essentially, he does it. See, like, I have no problem with somebody going to work gaining fiat dollars. I do it all the time. That's not the issue. It's the way he does it. He scams people for it. And now he's using an extension of Bitcoin, in a sense, a clone, a copy of the idea, the concept, and in many ways, the technology that is Bitcoin, where, again, 10,000 of these things over the last 10 years have been created, and 90% of them are already gone, dead and gone, because that's where they're all going. And essentially, he's riding the wave of hype that's out there in the world around this, because there's so many new people that it takes a while to get caught up. So they see the bells and whistles. They think, oh, it's just like Bitcoin because it's promoted that way. And he's just behind the scenes like, ha, 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 look at how many more of the noobs are coming in. I'll just take a little of their money. He's just so freaking evil. It's gross. It's so disgusting.
And the thing that's very interesting too is, so he's already a fiat billionaire. He's hit a peak, probably more than, I don't know your net worth, Jim, but I mean, to be honest, there's only about 4,000, 5,000 max, if that, billionaires in the world. And I guess as we print more money, everyone will be a billionaire, but then they'll be trillionaires. But most likely you and I could say this with kind of confidence that we won't reach his level of wealth. And that's not against you or I or anything like that.
That's all right. I'm not a billionaire. I'm not afraid to admit it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm almost there. I'm close, but
I'm trying to be a sat billionaire.
You can tell by my surroundings how wealthy I am.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to be a sat billionaire is my goal right now. So in Satoshis. Yeah, but right. I guess the thing that's very interesting to me, so he's obviously already made all his wealth, or a bulk of his wealth. Why would he even risk in something like this? I know it's an unregulated aspect right now, cryptocurrency in general, but if I was Gary Gensler at the SEC or any of the regulating bodies that would regulate this, like, he would be, if are you going to go after a kid that put $500 into a random altcoin, flipped it for, 10x their money, they made $500, they went to 5,000. Those are kind of small fish in the pond. Or are you going to go after a guy that's a billionaire that's doing this in the magnitude of hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, or whatever it may be that they can flip their money into, or they think they're going to flip their money into? Not only are they accredited investors compared to someone that's doing just the $500, $1,000, $100 here and there, $50 here and there, they're the small fish in the pond. I mean, why would he put himself in that level of risk in doing so? That's the thing that I really just doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm not going to speculate what he thinks about, except to say that people like him, I think they either don't think they're at risk because they think they're above others, or they know they could pay off people, because sometimes it's very obvious that they can, and they've been told that they can. If you just pay me, I'll look the other way. I mean, that's how a lot of stuff happens.
Yeah.
So it could be that, or he could just be totally stupid, or, but ultimately, I don't understand when you get a certain amount of money, you can know, I guess you can't know. You can't know how much money you're going to need for the rest of your life. But if you get a certain amount, you can make a pretty good guesstimation that it's not going to run out. Like, it just depends on your lifestyle and how much you have to support, whether it's you or a big family or whatever. But for everybody, there's a number essentially that will carry you the rest of your life. And some people have that times 100, like a guy like Chamath, potentially. If you're maintaining, like Michael Saylor has 7 yachts? I can't imagine the crew of each yacht that live on the yachts. He can't be on all of them. So there's other people living on his yachts, maintaining every day, cleaning, wiping, painting every day. You got to maintain a boat 24/7, 365 if you want it to stay nice. So what's that cost him? Like that, if that's what you need to live on, you need a lot, right? But the average person doesn't need even close to that. And literally, to live life, you don't need anything near that. To actually just live life and be happy, what do you need? Food, clothing, shelter, love, some form of safety and some ability to, enjoy, whether it's through work or art or relationships, ability to survive on your own, which is to be able to carry your own weight, pay your own bills. I mean, the essence of life is pretty simple, but some people want to experience it at high levels, whether it be huge amounts of excitement jumping out of planes or really lavish jewelry hanging on their body, and that just increases the cost of life, right? But the basic cost of life is pretty low. To be happy, right? It can be reasonably low. And there's millions of people on this planet that live at a very low financial level that are essentially happy, as long as they're not being overly oppressed by the humans around them that have control over their geographic location, right? That's essentially what it comes down to. So, what number is enough before you can stop scamming people and just, be honest and humble and actually go out and teach, help people, right?
Yeah.
Like, no, he doesn't want to do that. He just wants more money.
Yeah.
That's horrible. That's disgusting. I want more money too, but not at the expense of scamming somebody out of it. Yeah. Like, no, I want them to give it to me voluntarily. I want to give them value and they give me some money. That's it. It's supposed to work. That's how it's worked for me. That's how it's supposed to work, in my opinion. That's capitalism, free market capitalism. It's a voluntary exchange. The money you give me is less valuable than the thing I'm giving you. That's why you give it up. And the thing I'm giving you is less valuable to me. So that's why I give it up and I want the money instead. It's a free exchange. It's very subjective. All value is subjective once you learn that. And if two people willingly give it up, the only difference is when somebody's giving up money for something they are misled about. Let's say, I've always said it like, a fair exchange is when both people to the trade know all the relevant facts about that trade. The relevant facts, right? Like, what would cause me to change my mind about this? That's a relevant fact. Is it going to break next week? Has it been, the car have half as many miles as the odometer actually says, or twice as many? Like, what are the relevant facts that I'm trying to decide? Is this worth it? If you know all of them, then you can make an honest and fair trade. And both people need to know all the facts on either side of the trade. And if both people know all relevant facts and are under no duress to make the trade, then it's absolutely fair. Even if they find out something later they didn't know, if they think of it as relevant, but they couldn't think of it as relevant at the time, it doesn't count. If what was relevant at the time. Well, I mean, that's not even true. There could have been something you were unaware that was relevant, and the guy knew it was relevant. He didn't tell you. So like, that's like, again, with like a car analogy, if somebody knows there's a problem with the engine, but you're not a mechanic and you can't tell, and you say, hey, is there anything wrong with the engine? And the guy says, oh, no, it runs great. Well, that's a relevant fact that you were misled about. So like, again, you don't have to know that it's relevant to have it hidden from you. And you know what I'm saying? So you don't have to have all knowledge about all things. You just need to be presented with all the relevant facts. Now, if the other guy didn't know there was a problem in the engine, then you were not shafted, right? If he doesn't know mechanic either, and he goes, no, it's been fine for me, and he's literally not lying, then you don't have a case. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I feel like I've gone far off of whatever question you asked me. I don't even remember what it was.
It's fine. No, it's good. I love the rants. It makes the podcast more interesting. So I guess segueing into another question. So sure. I loved your piece talking about Bitcoin as real estate. And I know it's an analogy that I've kind of used to talk about the population and 21 million Bitcoins and kind of trying to divide them evenly among the population. And if you want to become in the 1%, you multiply that number by 100 to get to the top 1%. So I guess, can you explain ultimately what led you to writing that piece, and then what you've learned since writing it, and have your ideas expanded or contracted or contradicted with that piece that you've written? I know that's kind of three parts. So I guess ultimately what led you to write that piece first?
Well, what led me to write it was it started as a tweet thread. And what sparked the thought was something I heard a guy named Trace Mayer say. Do you know who Trace Mayer is?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So he's been sort of MIA for about 2 years now, because he went off the rails, so to speak, and disappointed the Bitcoin community. Anyway, the point is, he was very influential and a smart guy, and he taught me a lot. I liked him. I don't dislike him, but I don't respect what he did. Anyway, the point is, he mentioned the Bitcoin blockchain as real estate, and you need to get your piece of it. He may not have used the analogy of the world and there's a finite amount of real estate, but I instantly thought that when I heard those words, like, okay, well, there's only so much real estate, and I knew there was only 21 million Bitcoin, and I thought that's interesting. So like, I mean, I wonder, and I started thinking, like, I wonder how much real estate each person would get if you divided it up equally. And then I wonder how much Bitcoin each person would get if you divide it up equally. And then, so I just started doing a whole bunch of math, and I go online and I start looking at, try and find websites that estimate how many people are here, and others that estimate how much land mass is available. And then you subtract out things like mountains and swamps, and how much usable land do we have to work with, and you can get down to some number that you can say, okay, well, if all the usable land was cut up and everybody got some, how much would it be? And I think it was like a little less than 2 acres, which is kind of a lot. 1 acre is a good amount of property for one person. So your family of 6 and you got like 6 to 10 acres of land. It's quite a lot of space, right? So, but it's not. Some people live in cities in high-rise buildings, and there's like 1,000 people occupy 1 acre or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's not equally distributed. But if you chopped up Bitcoin and gave it to everybody, you'd have like 231,000 sats, which is like nothing. And at the time when I wrote the article, it was like less than $100 to buy that much.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, what if you had $100 and somebody offered you 2 acres? Well, what if somebody? Oh, so what was it? I think I went like, okay, then if you took that and you said, extrapolated that and said, okay, what would a full Bitcoin be equal to in terms of land? So Bitcoin at the time was like $9,000 for a full Bitcoin. And to get your fair share, 230,000 Satoshis, whatever, was like $100. So a tiny fraction of that. So if you had your 2 acres of land, what would that be in terms of like a whole Bitcoin relative to the 230,000 sats? And it was like 1,800 acres. And then my thought was like, wow, if somebody offered me 1,800 acres for $9,000 right now, would I buy it? I'd be like, of course I'd buy it.
Yeah.
Like 1,800 acres for $9,000. Where can you get that on the planet other than in the Mojave Desert or something where nobody wants to live? I don't know. Ultimately, it's like, to me, it hit hard. Like, this is cheap. $9,000 for a full Bitcoin is cheap when you consider there's a limited amount. Well, that's it. It's just like cheap. The land.
It's even cheap right now at $56,000.
Well, it is
per Bitcoin.
Right. And at the end of the article I wrote, I did the analogy. Well, what if Bitcoin was 10 grand, 20 grand, 50 grand, 100? What would it cost you for your fair share? And even at $1 million, your fair share was only a couple thousand of US dollars. So like, we're still super early. You're $60,000 or whatever we are now. It's 57 something right now. You got a chart up just like me. I got another screen over here.
Yep.
Like what is your 57,000? Like it's such a small percentage of the pie of Bitcoin. Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of fiat dollars. Most people will never own a whole Bitcoin at this point. It's not going to be easy to get one now. Yeah. And as the price keeps going up, it's going to be that much harder. But the point is, even a fraction of that is as much of it as you can get is essentially the idea. It's like, if you could have bought real estate, 100 or 1,000 years ago, really cheap, or even if it felt expensive, but you knew it was going to lock in like wealth for your family for generations because you own this huge area. That's what it's like. That's what it's like buying space on the Bitcoin blockchain. When you buy Satoshis or buy Bitcoins, you're owning a larger portion of a non-growing pie. Essentially, it's not getting any bigger. So
yeah. So I guess expanding on that. So I guess you wrote that in 2019, 2018 timeframe. I'm not sure.
I forget. It got published maybe in 2020.
Okay.
I forget. So it was put in Citadel 21 magazine. They published it. So that was nice of them. And it's online too.
So I guess what have you learned since writing it, and how have your ideas expanded on that or contradicted it, or if any at all?
What have I learned about Bitcoin life? What?
Yeah, I guess Bitcoin. I guess so. Bitcoin, I always see as something that you're always constantly learning and developing. I've learned more about Lightning in this last year, which is something I didn't know as much. I've learned a little bit about the Liquid network, not as much as I'd like to know. But I guess since writing that, how much more have you learned since doing that?
Oh, well, yeah. Outside of that, so that was just me trying to wrap my head around some ideas and then putting it on paper and wondering if other people, if it would resonate. A lot of people agree with the idea. And I'm not the only one who has tried to figure out, if you split up all the Bitcoin, how much would each person get? I see it all the time, actually, on Twitter. People come up with numbers very close to mine, which is, again, whoever you get the number for the amount of people from is that's going to determine, nobody knows how many people are really here. It changes every minute. So, whatever, you pick a number and divide and you get some number, but it's always close to the one I came up with. So, that's kind of nice because other people have had the same thought, even if they haven't read the thing I wrote. So it's nice to know that I wasn't off on my thinking. And that was just, I guess, one one idea, you get in the Bitcoin rabbit hole and you start seeing this from all different angles. And so that was just one. So yeah. So what have I learned since? Well, I'm always paying attention. So I'm always trying to learn whatever I could learn. I referenced it earlier. When I was a kid growing up, I used to take things apart. It was just a natural thing. I wanted to see how things worked, and I would just get a screwdriver and open it up and sometimes break things doing it, but I learned. And so I had to do that for Bitcoin. I took it apart, essentially trying to learn what the code was doing, even though I can't read code. But I got into the technical weeds like the average person would never want to. But I I felt like this. If I'm going to tell somebody else they should try and buy this thing, I have to be ready for the question, well, how does it work? Because if I can't answer how it works, how can I possibly tell somebody they should go get it?
Yeah.
Not what is it going to do? How much is it going to be worth? How does it work? That I cared way more about that because I need to explain why I was trusting it and why you can trust it too, essentially. And to me, that was way more important than I think it's going to be worth $1 million. Somebody could say, oh, great, I want some, but they won't know why it's going to be worth $1 million. I cared about why I think it's going to be. And I needed to be ready for the question if somebody was going to challenge me. So I did all that work. So that's all I do essentially is like, I care mostly about that. So I study the technical stuff. I go to BitDevs meetings in New York City. And so I care about how Schnorr signatures and Taproot work. And I'm far from an expert, but I know more than the average person about this stuff because I care. I want to see where this is going as far as the technology around Bitcoin and how it's going to make it more user-friendly and everything else. So there's just so much, I can't keep up with it. There's way too many Bitcoin wallets that you can be using right now. There's all different types of coin join implementations and people keep talking about more and different ways to do that kind of stuff, privacy issues. There's so much to look at. So being that I'm not in the industry, I just care about it. I'm still building homes and doing construction work and whatnot. So I'm just taking in whatever is in front of me, whatever appeals to me at the moment. It's like I'm building a big giant puzzle and I got a lot of the pieces and there's a ton of missing ones. But I just don't care to finish it just yet. I don't even have time to finish it. I'm going to fill it in for the rest of my life. And maybe it'll actually get all the way done, at least for me, my desire to understand Bitcoin to whatever full extent I need to understand it. The point is, I never stop learning. I care mostly about the technical stuff, but I listen to all the economic stuff. Guys like Greg Foss who talk about, bond returns. That's an area of my life that I was no expert in. I understood it in a very cursory manner, but his insights have been very helpful. It's just another way to understand how Bitcoin is affecting the world around me. Let's say the parts that I don't pay attention to. There's people out there every day that are in the bond trading world, and I don't know what their world is like, but through Greg, I do a little, and then somebody like Preston Pish, he's another guy that's got a lot of insight into the financial world. I like listening to him because not only because the great guests that he has on, but also his own knowledge and his ability to ask good questions. So all this stuff keeps me going. I want to learn about everything and anything that has anything to do with Bitcoin or that affects it, even in, especially in a negative way, but a positive way as well. I want to know all of it. I want to know where the concerns need to be so I can be on the right side of the battle to make sure that we don't have to worry about whatever next bad thing might be coming along. So it takes doing homework and a lot of discipline. Sometimes you got to listen to what politicians are saying, even if you don't want to. I hate politics. I have no interest in any of it, but it affects my life indirectly and directly sometimes. And so I got to devote a few minutes a day or a week or whatever to getting up to speed on whatever latest crap they're putting out, just so I can know, do I need to worry? Do I need to make a change in my own life? What the heck where's the next attack surface? I mean, you just don't know. So if you want to stay closed off in your own little bubble of life, good luck, and then you're not going to see it coming. That doesn't mean I'm fully prepared. I just try my best. But around Bitcoin, just never-ending conversation, never-ending education. What you might not know this about me, but I happen to spend a lot of time by myself during the day. When I'm working, it just so happens that I got a lot of time where I can be listening. I can't be reading books, but I listen to podcasts all day long, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I have gotten very used to listening essentially at 2x, which is not easy for everybody.
That's what I do as well.
But, I'm getting twice the information in the same amount of time. And that to me is super valuable. Like I easily, in the last 4.5, almost 5 years now that I started studying Bitcoin, I have a doctorate level education in terms of the amount of hours I put in. No one's given me a doctorate for this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I put in that amount of hours probably like a doctoral student would have done in the term of listening to lectures, right? Didn't take any tests or whatever, but whatever. It's like anything else. If you want to learn something, you hear it enough times, it's going to sink in. It's like repetition. So I know a lot of stuff about Bitcoin at this point, undisputed. And a lot of the people that are smarter than me, when I go to a BitDevs meeting and I ask questions all the time, and I get treated with a high level of respect from people. And sometimes I get, at the end of the meeting, someone will come up and go, dude, that was a great question. Thanks. And I was glad you asked that because I wanted to know the same thing. And I'm like, wow, okay, this stuff's sinking in. I'm not so stupid. Okay, good. It's nice to feel like accepted in a community of really smart people that are all trying to do the same thing, man. We all just want this thing to succeed because we all see it as something that's going to help humanity. It's not about just getting wealthier, personally wealthier. I think the people who are most into Bitcoin care about it as something that's going to literally save humanity. That's how I see it. Yeah, I'm happy that the Bitcoin I purchased years ago is worth more now if I was to spend it. That's nice, but it's way more important what it's going to do potentially to all of society and the fairness that it can bring to all of society when we get rid of fiat money and the control that some people have over it, which indirectly controls the lives of other people. And once that all goes away and everybody gets to control their own life and have their own money that's unconfiscatable, yeah, that changes the game for everybody. And it allows for a level playing field never before seen in human history, in my opinion. And so I'm fighting for that because there's people that I'm going to leave behind, that I'm going to have to leave my footprints on this planet. Like I could just take and not give a crap, but that's not me. I would rather spend the rest of my life helping Bitcoin succeed, knowing I did the best I could for the people that are going to take over this earth after I'm gone. And some of those people are people I love and care about. Yeah. So I want to do the best I can to leave them something that they could work with that's better than what I had. If there's any chance I could make that even a tiniest little contribution to that, that's what I want to do.
Jim, it's been a pleasure having you on. I'm going to wrap up the questions now.
No problem.
So do some last couple questions and then we'll wrap out and we'll exit out there. So what's been your biggest investment or business mistake? So I know with you, your contracting business and stuff.
All right. This is an easy, quick one. So when Hurricane Sandy hit, all right, well, a little backstory. On Fire Island, where I work, the houses are on wooden poles. Mm-hmm. They would wear out, sometimes just wear out over years, and you would have to lift the house up and put new poles under them. So that was very common. House lifting on Long Island, especially Fire Island, was very common. The average person never sees a house get lifted. I saw it happen all the time. And then customers of mine needed it. So I would get their houses lifted and I would hire a house lifter. And then Hurricane Sandy hit. And I couldn't get house lifters and my customers wanted their houses lifted. So I got more than one person said, just buy the equipment, do it yourself. And I knew enough about it that I was confident I could. And I found a guy in Wisconsin selling his entire company. And I spent way too much money going to Wisconsin and learning from this guy and investing in buying his company. And the big mistake I made was I didn't have a signed contract before I started spending money. And I trusted this guy to be able to come to an agreement on a contract. But then when he sent me a contract, there was so much hidden bullshit in it. I was like, I was pissed. I was like, you really think I'm just going to sign this the way you snuck in all these little clauses here and there? I was like, oh, this guy was a shyster. And I spent thousands, tens of thousands, and I walked away from the deal. I didn't buy the guy's company. I still put together a house lifting company, which I still own to this day. There's not nearly as much house lifting work, but I still went forward. It was a big, expensive mistake. I trusted somebody I should never have trusted. He hoodwinked me. He was super nice until it came down to putting it on paper and signing. And he didn't want to do all the things we had essentially talked about how it was going to unfold. And I was like, you son of a bitch. So that's the biggest mistake I ever made in business that I could think of. And it wasn't even huge compared to some people that lose millions, but I was pissed. And it cost me a lot. For me at the time, it was a lot and a lot of time. But there was still a lot of learning out of it. I learned not only that business mistake, but he did teach me a bunch of house lifting stuff that I may not have learned had I not spent the time with him. So there's a sort of a silver lining. But anyway,
yeah, a great answer. I guess what's been your favorite book, podcast, YouTube channel, or website that you go to for investing information? You don't have to give one of each. You can just give one general thing.
The first book that always comes to mind when someone asks me about a book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And
I
probably
actually have it right up there. Yeah.
yeah,
Like,
I got the audio tapes. I used to drive and listen to them, and it just really helped me focus on how to manage myself and my relationships. Is essentially what it's about. It allows you to figure out how to control and manage yourself, which are the first 3 habits. The second 3 habits he talks about as public habits, which is your interactions with other people, and the seventh habit he calls sharpen the saw, which is just to always work on all 6. But they build on each other, and it's really interesting the way he lays it out, and it makes total logical sense, and I couldn't not do it. So I've aligned my life around those 7 habits essentially as best I could, and it's worked for me. And so it always seems to be the first one I think of, but there's so many other good ones out there. I can't even, I mean, like just one of the most recent ones was super hard, long read, Human Action by Ludwig von Mises, which is really technical and crazy, but boy, did that open my eyes to economics, right? And then Atlas Shrugged, another really long book, which is fiction, but boy, Ayn Rand had a real way with words, and that is a really compelling story. So, I mean, that's just 3 books right there. One of them is a fiction, but they're all really good, and there's tons more. When it comes to podcasts, I mentioned a couple of them already, like Preston Pish's podcast. I listen to What Bitcoin Did, as many people, even though there's a lot of people that don't like it, but Peter has a lot of good guests on, and I learn a lot from his guests. So I gave him some shit about his sponsors because I don't agree with everything he does and the way he does it. I think he's a decent guy ultimately, and in the end, he interviews a lot of good people, and so I learned a lot listening to him. Adam Meister, whose show you and I were both on recently, he's awesome, tons of energy. And he really knows what he's talking about. He's been in it for a long time. He's got conviction. I love that. I love his spirit. So he's worth listening to. The Bitcoin Matrix podcast with Cedric. He's great. Also, a lot of great guests on his podcast. There's really, honestly, too many of them. Alex Vetsky does a great podcast when he's up there. Tone Vase, I think, he gets lots of great guests. You know, he does a trading thing. Not everybody's into trading, but when he does his law review show or This Week in Bitcoin show or whatever it is he's doing, he gets great guests on. I don't know. If I kept thinking, there's got to be tons more. I feel bad for all the ones I'm not thinking of. Marty Bent, of course, what him and Matt Odell do all the time is awesome. You know, so yeah, that's just a couple.
Yeah, that's a good list.
I should have made a list. I mean, there's way too many. There's really a lot of good ones.
All right. And then once again, thanks so much for your time. I guess if someone wants to learn more about you or your business, where would they go to find out more?
If they want to learn about my business, they're going to have to call me because I don't advertise. I don't have a website. I never cared. But, you know, you're not going to care about my business unless you're right here on Long Island and you need your house worked on. But as far as Bitcoin goes, just hit me up on Twitter, Surfer Jim W on Twitter, and that's it. You know, my DMs are open. I'm willing to talk to people and answer questions. And if I can help, I'm willing to. You know, like I said at one or more points in this podcast, I really want Bitcoin to succeed because I think it's going to help people, everybody. And so it's my mission, essentially, for the rest of my life to sort of devote it to Bitcoin. I think I'll be able to essentially retire in the not too distant future and not have to worry. Like I said before, you do a calculation. If you save up enough money, you might be able to make it through the rest of your life without working at some point. I think I'm close to that, which allow me to put 100% of my time into Bitcoin. And I kind of can't wait because I think I could bring a lot of value in terms of helping people understand it in a way that there's no hidden agenda. Like, I don't need you to buy something from me. You know, I mean, if you want to, because you think I gave you some value, that's fine. Throw me some sats, but you know, I'm not going to scam you because I don't need the money. I want to be in that position where I don't need to cheat, scam, lie, nothing, you know, mislead, misrepresent who I am because I need some money because I got to pay my bills, you know, like whatever forces people to act that way. Not quite sure what it is, but there's enough people out there scamming that, you know, it must be, I don't know, it must be easy. I don't know. Whatever. I can't live with myself. I just want to do good for people and for this world. And so, you know, if you think I could help, you know, hit me up. I'll talk to you all day long and answer your questions if I can. So thanks for having me on, dude. I really appreciate it. You know, I think what you're doing is great. 56 podcasts already, dude. That's awesome. And, you know, you haven't even been here that long and you already got that many. That's unreal. So I think that's fantastic. I think everybody that gives back to this space like this, you and I both not getting paid for this, right? No. So like, you know, we're doing this for the love of it. And I think that's awesome. I give you a lot of credit. You got to be like half my age or less. And good for you, man, that you found this thing at such an early part of your life. it's going to make a huge difference in not just your life, but the lives of everybody you touch. So good on you. Keep it up. Keep up the good work. And hopefully we get to shake hands one day in person and, celebrate life at a conference or at dinner or something somewhere. I don't drink anymore. I was going to say, we'll toast a beer, but I could drink one beer, I guess. But.
All right. Sounds good. I look forward to that day, Jim. Thanks for coming on. As always, everyone, man. You can find me on the Amateur Investors, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it, our website. So it's great having Jim on the podcast, and I'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.